Coming at you live from their secret location in an underwater bunker 2 miles off the Emerald Coast, it's Chimichanga Talk with your host, Deadpool Speaks.
Okay, and I think you are set.
All right, and we're back, guys. We're back, and it's been an amazing ride. A lot's been going on. It feels like we've been doing this for years and years. But you know what? There's somebody that I know that I have known for years and years. He's our next guest, an absolutely wonderful man, the big smiling face that you see there on your screen. You could meet him in different conventions, in different aspects, with that big old smiling face, always willing to give you a handshake and a bookmark. Which we've actually done bookmark exchanges. Not only is he an amazing writer, screenplay writer. Actually, I see that little Batman screenplay right over his shoulder, which absolutely fantastic. But he's a man of many talents. Screenwriter, author. I should say that right. Author, producer, director. And just all around amazing guy. Big round of applause for Steve Wise. How are you, Steve?
I'm pretty good. How are you guys doing?
Good. You know, we've known each other since about 2013.
I believe that, yeah, because 2014 was the first year of Pensacon, where I was working at the time. We met as we were gearing up, because you came in and did some cool stuff for us back then.
Yeah, we had a live podcast at Pensacon. Back then, podcasting wasn't as relevant as it is kind of now. Now, podcasting is everywhere.
Yeah, you can find a
everyone
podcaster
has
anywhere.
a podcast. Yeah,
Just
exactly.
go to the street in New York and you'll find a live stream somewhere.
So you see, we were the first to now, but
the very first ever on the internet.
Yeah, we were
exactly.
the first. We're gonna start putting that in the description now. Well, like the first podcasters.
We still have that Chimichanga Talk MySpace page. But you know, let's start about your humble beginnings, because you know, you got your BA, right, from a little place in Florida. Right. Now, I don't know. There's a lot of rivalry in Florida when it comes to, like, you know, what school you go to. University of Central Florida.
Yeah.
And from there, in you know, you have a string of short films that you've done. You've always had like this creative passion, this creative energy. Where did that come from?
Oh, well, first off, let me say thank you for having me on here. I really appreciate you bringing me on. But I don't know. I've literally been making movies since I was 8 years old. My best friend lived across the street. His brother, this is dating me here. He had a Super 8 camera that he was going to make a movie, and he needed some neighborhood kids to help out with. And so my friend John called me up and went over there, and we did this movie, and then we continued, and all through my childhood we were making movies, and after I moved away, I just continued. I got my own camera and continued, and eventually got into UCF's film program, and you know, which was at UCF, the University of Central Florida, is in Orlando. And at the time I was living in Oklahoma, and my parents had moved to Orlando, so I came over to visit during Easter break, and my mom said, you know, there's a college just down the street that has a new film program that they're starting up. And so I moved immediately. And fortunately, I was one of the first students in this new program. They only allowed 30 students in that first year. And
wow.
You know, a couple of the guys went on to some pretty good success. Made a little movie called The Blair Witch Project. Unfortunately, was not part of that group, but oh well.
At least you're in the same room. You'll be able to say you're in the same room.
Yeah, it's just like you know, we had Gary Schwartz on not that long ago, and he's actually had his hands, and he's touched different parts of Hollywood in the most unbelievable way. And the thing is we were talking about his life, and you're like, yeah, I knew this person, and I kind of started this. I mean, he knew the guy who created the Furby. That was his miming partner. So it's like, wow, we don't know who like we run into in this life, but I mean, even though the Blair Witch Project, obviously massive success for an independent film, you came and fell off the same tree pretty much.
Well, it was funny because one of the directors, Dan Myrick, he and I shared an office at Universal Studios for like 3 years, and we also worked. Oh, it was a college work program that at Lockheed Martin, where we videotaped the build process of, among other things, the Patriot missile.
Really?
And so here we were, college kids walking around a secure governmental facility that made weapons of mass destruction, if you will, with video cameras, and we're just wandering around. This had access to pretty much everything that, I mean, we talked to some people that had been working there for 20 years who had never seen some of the locations inside the facility that we had access to. It was crazy.
Wow. That's like one of the weird things. Like, I would never have pictured that part of your life. It's like most people don't really understand. It's like, oh yeah, I remember doing this, and I'm like, wait, Lockheed Martin? It's like, what? Okay, well that's a little weird. I mean, but so after like the whole internship, what did you do after that?
Well, I formed a production company at one point that with a friend of mine, ended up not really going anywhere. I spent a lot of time writing screenplays. My focus at that time was writing screenplays and trying to get independent films made, which is very, very difficult to do, because you have to have all the right elements put into place, the funding, and of course the right project and the right people connected to it, try to get actors attached. And it's very, very difficult for all those elements to come together. So when they do, it's almost a miracle,
Yeah.
But so, I worked on a lot of film projects, as a freelancer, did a lot of odd jobs, did a lot of work that, office type work that was just soul sucking. So it just, you have to do what you have to do to get by. But I teamed up with a buddy of mine, Lee Shapiro, and we wrote a couple screenplays together, and had some that we wrote independently also. And we spent several years going from Orlando to Los Angeles and pitching our screenplays to studios. And I mean, literally every studio in Hollywood read our work. Every production company out there read our work. And it's a little frustrating because it was one of those things where I don't like to tell you no, but they do in a roundabout way. And it's like, well, this isn't for us, but that's whatever else you have.
Yeah.
And because basically everybody in Hollywood is afraid to lose their jobs. And so they are really hesitant to say yes, unless it's something that, again, has all the right elements, exactly what they're looking for. Then it moves up the ladder. And even if they do buy the script from you, a lot of times it just goes on a shelf. And like, but that, I mean, you pointed out the Batman script here, which we called Batman Dark Knight, all one word. It was cheesy, and we've been called out for it, but we thought it was kind of maybe kind of cool to have the K in dark and night kind of be shared. We did that as a temporary title, knowing that it would probably be changed anyways. But we pitched it to Warner Brothers. I actually forced Lee to watch Batman and Robin, because he just absolutely refused to watch that movie. And I said, no, you're sitting down and watching this. So I forced him to watch it. And we had to like pause the movie multiple times just to say, wait, did what we thought happened just happened? And we had to rewind the tape, and yeah, they did that. And I was like, oh, all right. And so afterwards, he looked at me and said, we could write something better than that. And we had just gotten back from Los Angeles where we had a meeting with Warner Brothers. And so we put our brains together and came up with an idea. And we called our contact at Warner Brothers and said, hey, we've got a pitch for a Batman movie. And he said, yeah, sure. And we pitched it. He sent us up the ladder to the vice president of the company. And we pitched it to him. And he said, yeah, that's great. Write the script. So, okay. And we wrote the script and we did a couple drafts. And when we sent it off to Tom LaSalle, the VP, that very week he quit.
Oh.
And like,
so what?
What timing is that? It was such a great story that he couldn't handle it. I guess you want to see it as a fan instead of a creator.
Well, we worked with them for another 2 years, and Tom was replaced by Jeff Robinoff, and Lorenzo Di Bonaventura was the president of the company at the time. And Lorenzo talked with us on the phone a few times. He said, we don't know what direction we're going to take with the Batman franchise. Because our script was a direct sequel to, the Tim Burton, Joel Schumacher films, trying to make it arc again, back to the Tim Burton type of style. Scarecrow was our main villain. Man-Bat was featured in it. And, but they weren't sure, what they were going to do. And eventually, Jeff Robinoff called us and said, well, we decided to go in a different direction. And at the time, he told us that they were going to do an adaptation of Frank Miller's Batman Year One, the graphic novel. And they hired Frank to write the screenplay with Darren Aronofsky, who was going to direct. And when he told us that, we're like, yeah, sure, yeah, of course, that sounds great. I'll be the first in line to buy a ticket to see that. And a year went by, and when the script was finished, Warner Brothers hated the script and fired those two.
Wow.
And then they went on to, they hired George Miller to do, I believe, Justice League, which got canceled. They brought in Wolfgang Peterson to do Batman versus Superman. That got canceled. I may have those directors mixed up on the projects, but they were going to do a live action Batman Beyond. They were going to do one other project too. Every single one of those got canceled. And in the meantime, we're just like, we've got a script here,
and come on, make it happen.
And eventually, Batman Begins was announced, and okay, and even though
what's
a little familiar.
Yeah, I was about to say, what's really interesting about your screenplay and Batman Begins is there are some similarities, not crazy ones, but there are some similarities. So they definitely took a bit of what they got from you and put it in there. But
well, what's funny is Lee got a hold of the screenplay to Batman Begins before the movie came out, and he gave it to me, and he said, "Here, read this." And I'm reading, going, "Oh wow, this is great! I love this." Like, wait, that sounds familiar, and reading through it, line, that's pretty much on the nose of what we wrote.
Yeah, and then, that's the crazy thing is that because in Hollywood, a lot of people were like, okay, and you hear this from like screenwriters all the time. It's like, well, they kind of took my idea, they rolled with it, and it's like this was pretty much my idea. This was kind of like it, but they built it into something else. It's big business in a sense,
well, ideas are not copyright,
correct.
Copyrightable, is that the word? You can't copyright ideas, in other words. It has to be the execution of the idea. And Warner Brothers owns the Batman IP, so we pulled a lot from the comic books, and in particular with Scarecrow, with one exception. And this is what's really annoying is every time that we have an idea, it's like, ooh, nobody's ever done that before, someone does it. And this idea actually ended up being used for one of the James Bond villains, but what we did with Scarecrow was have him have this condition where he doesn't feel pain. Well, there literally was just a movie that came out a few weeks ago with Jack Quaid called Novocaine, where his
Novocaine,
character
yeah.
has that condition. Like, we were the first.
But I mean, it was
like
a brilliant way to go ahead and introduce a character who, kind of embodies fear and kind of like use it as a weapon, is someone who doesn't understand what it's like to have that, because they have this condition that kind of eliminates that part of, the sensory part. That's like, oh, okay, so it was a really cool take on Scarecrow,
Well, thank you.
which
Oh, yeah.
you guys, if you have the ability, we're going to go ahead and link it below. He does have that for sale. And you definitely, being a Batman fan, I can tell you definitely want to go ahead and read it. I picked it up at a convention, and I was done with it in a day, just because I couldn't put it down. It was great. And we had that discussion there. It's like, and I'm curious because have you heard of Bat in the Sun?
I don't believe so.
They are like a fan based YouTube Batman.
Are they the ones that did the audio drama?
Well, they did the
okay.
live action.
Yeah.
Um,
They have a
the
few.
guy. Yeah, we had their Batman on our show originally when it was just an audio podcast, and he was actually in Dodgeball as well. He was I think Taser in Dodgeball. He was part of the bad team, right? But he played their Batman. And I felt so bad for him because, like, at that time we were just doing all audio. Like, YouTube wasn't like as big as it is now, where everybody wants to see you, And he had gotten all dressed up for it and everything, and I was like, "No, dude, we're all audio." But they were talking about how a lot of this stuff was like, and you were talking about getting the funding and doing all this other stuff. I mean, nowadays it's a lot easier to kind of use different avenues that we didn't have before to kind of help fund these films. But he was lucky enough where he did get a lot of the fan support originally before Kickstarter, before Indiegogo, and all these other things to kind of produce these Batman films using, like a gray suit Batman, and using the guy's natural muscles and everything else to kind of just sell it. Now, have you ever thought, okay, well, these years later, right? Just for fun to do like a fan film, right? Where you can't really sell it because it's somebody else's property,
Right.
but just to kind of like
Film the story.
And I know you have other visions, yeah, but tell the story and kind of see it to completion. Did you ever think about that?
Well, I wouldn't want to try to produce like a fan film version myself.
Mhm.
I'm not a pun intended, not really a fan of fan films in general. I mean, some of them are done really well.
Yeah.
But I mean, we would not have written that unless Warner Brothers had said write it, because
Mhm.
the way I look at it, and I know Lee kind of felt the same way, at least at the time, was why spend our time and energy and efforts and our skills to do something that is not our work? I would rather try to create something new and original and get that out there instead of playing in someone else's sandbox. Build my
Yeah.
own sandbox.
And
Yeah.
I understand that
And that-
completely. That's
Do you-
one of the most beautiful things, sorry, about
No.
fan films, and I do understand because fan films sometimes they don't even make it past like the starting line. You've had fan films that have had promising stories and ended up crumbling due to the creator's own ignorance,
Mhm.
And I do agree that sometimes fan films are not a good idea. Sometimes it's nice to just make your own story. Because the cool thing about your book and the screenplay of Dark Knight is, Scarecrow and Man-Bat. But I think Man-Bat's the one thing that kind of defeats fan film. Because how are you going to do Man-Bat with a small
Right.
budget. Unless you have like someone who owes you a lot that knows graphic design and like can do like CGI, you can't get a man bat.
Or somebody who
Eh,
just does really good makeup.
or someone
You
who
know?
does really good makeup. If they owe you a big favor, then I mean it could work, but the chances of that are very, very slim. But I do understand that the thought behind that.
Well, and just one other thing to say about fan films, not to dump on them, because a lot
No,
of people
yeah,
put their heart and souls into these because
yeah.
that's their fandom, literally, and
Mhm.
Yeah.
they don't have aspirations to go on and do a major motion picture or anything. They just want to play. And it's like little kids with action figures. It's like, oh, but we got a camera and we got costumes and maybe someone knows how
Mhm.
to do some special effects and so it's their way of expressing their love for that particular piece of work. And so I don't want to sound like I'm dumping on that because it
No,
is
no.
something that
Yeah.
is an expression of the love of whether it's Star Trek or Star Wars or Harry Potter or Batman or whatever.
Mm.
They don't necessarily want to move on and to do bigger and better things. They just want to do this one little thing and go, "Hey, look what I did as a show of love." So
Yeah.
there's that.
Yeah. And also
It's
because
like fan art.
yeah,
Like when people
Mhm,
do a whole bunch of
exactly.
fan art and stuff like that, and you get to appreciate it's their artistic flair on something that they love.
Right.
So no, I get it. But I mean, what you're proposing is for people to go ahead and take this passion for what they want to do. Like if they want to be a screenplay writer, to
Mhm.
go ahead and generate that idea, so that way they can see it to fruition and be like, hey, I can do something with this because it's mine. It doesn't belong to anybody else but me.
Yeah. And
So no,
pretty
yeah.
much, and even I mean, there's been instances where something that started off as fan fiction turned into something else because it's like, well, okay, so we've got Harry Potter, for instance, but we don't want to have that exact same thing, so maybe we'll set it in a school for wizards but change it up a little bit and maybe change the characters and then before you know it it becomes something new and original even though it's
right.
it's reminiscent of that it's becomes its own thing.
It's the Wizards of Waverly Place.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like a Disney show. Um, but after doing all that, because I mean, that's pretty cool to kind of say, okay, well, I was able to pitch this to Warner Brothers, putting together these screenplays. I mean, where did you decide to go to next?
Well, there's been a couple times in my life where I've quit the film industry completely, just because getting frustrated. We
Hmm.
had I had teamed up with another writer, Joe Weckerly, and he had his own production company with some other people, and we did a short film called Ice Blue, and then we were trying to pitch that as the pilot for an anthology TV series, and we ended up revising that to where we decided instead of trying to sell it as a TV series, let's make a movie. Let's do an anthology movie. And so the two of us wrote several other stories. We ended up rejecting, would not include Ice Blue in that, but we had this wraparound sequence. We ended up calling it the Magic Hour, and it was set in a bookstore where this magic book was had different short stories, and the main characters like maybe had some magical powers or something with it was the book dealer, and there was this guy who had been basically addicted to reading the books and had broken away from it but returns to the source of his addiction and is needing, he gets enticed to read again until ultimately it consumes him. So, it's not too subtle allegory there. But each of the stories were, kind of dealing with psychological issues. Each one had a twist. And, we really were proud of the work that we did on that. And we were in development for a couple of years on it. And we had some people involved that were supposedly trying to get us money, and that the film industry is full of con artists. Let's put it that way. People that are kind of shady, and we learned that we had just been spinning our wheels because the person that supposedly was getting us financing was not being truthful to us, and so we ended up canceling that project. Every now and then we dust it off and go, okay, can we do something with this?
Yeah.
But so yeah, that was one of the times where it's like, I've had it with this. I quit and I went on and did something else. But unfortunately, like kind of like the mafia, it's just you think you've escaped, but it draws you back in. And
You bring me back in. Yeah, no, exactly. It's like your little
I've ended
book
up doing
reader
other
there, right?
things. Yeah. I'm sorry,
Always
what's that?
addicted to the story. It's like your book reader, always addicted to the story, right? You always come back for more.
Right.
I want to drop this in because I'm not gonna say the actor's name because I'm not gonna put anything on them. But I had met them, and they said the same exact thing. They said I was about to retire. I was finally about to go move out. I was gonna live my life, and then they pulled me back in for a sequel, and now I can't get out. he told me
Yeah.
those words. It was a very popular voice actor, and he was like, "They just pulled me back. I wanted to go. I wanted to go so badly." So they really get like a mafia, and they pull you back in. Also, I think your camera froze. Not you, Steven.
No,
I
yeah, I know. I'm trying
yeah.
to fix it.
Oh,
Oops, there it goes. Okay.
there you
There
are.
we go.
Okay,
There
I
we go.
saw it freeze. I was like eyeballing you for a
Yeah,
minute there.
no. Yeah, I was like trying to fix it in the background.
No, you're fine. But yeah, it is like if you if you ever try to quit, they're gonna toss you into the ocean. That's pretty much how it is.
Well, and where I'm coming from too, it's like, when I had walked away from everything, yeah, I ended up doing a couple small projects, a couple small short films. Did like there were some contests that were um, like 24 hour, 36 hour, 48 hour, whatever they were, video races where they give you a topic and they give you like usually a prop and a line of dialogue, and everybody has to use the same thing, and you're given
Mhm.
X number of hours to write, shoot, and edit and turn it in. And so we did did a couple of those. Ended up winning some awards from those. Did another, did a couple other short films that were more scripted out and to some varying success. And but I ended up here in Northwest Florida. Um, I ended up getting brought on with a company called Kinematic Entertainment, where I produced several short films for them. And they were connected to Pensacon in the early days, and that's how I got sucked into that. And so it's like a domino effect. One thing leads to another. But because of my work with Pensacon, I was able to meet people like Alex Hyde White, who started my most recent film, The Walker. I met Corin Nemec and Jason London, who starred in a TV pilot called Blackwater Blues that I directed. And so I've been able to meet some great people and work with a lot of professionals. And I've won an embarrassing amount of awards for my films. And so
And they've done amazing tours too. Like your film Survey, right?
yeah,
60 film festivals in
something like that. Yeah.
or so it was like a ridiculous amount. I know it was like a but I mean, how cool is that to see? Because I remember when you first started talking about you were shooting it, okay, being friends and everything, being able to see kind of the whole thing come to light wasn't easy. Um, I mean, the
No.
film itself is like what, just under 30 minutes. It's like 20 some odd minutes, right?
Oh no, Survey is only like 13 minutes long.
Oh, okay. I thought it was longer. Okay,
No.
no. Yeah, but the thing is that with these tours that it did, I mean, it's taking you around the world and back. Um,
The film has played. Oh, gee, I've lost track of how many countries now. I want to say at least a dozen different countries. I know
mhm.
it. I don't even have the facts in my fingertips. I know it's played in Canada, it played in the United Kingdom, in France and Russia, um, Italy. Um, Man, I can't even remember all the places it played, and it played all over the country as well. And fortunately, I was able to go to some of the film festivals, and obviously, I can't afford to go to all of them, but I was able
Yeah.
to. And yeah, that film it was a kind of like a fantasy action film, if you will. Um, Anna Faulkner, who's just an amazing person, starred in it, and I had the good fortune of working with her again in The Walker. Um, she and her husband Desso run the local lightsaber group, or I don't know if they call it lightsaber, the Saber group. And forgive me, Anna and Desso, I can't get the name of your group precisely right. Gulf Coast Saber Training, I believe. Um,
Yeah, they're the ones that do the Jedi Academy at the. Like, I think they do
they
like
do. They're at Pensacon
Is that
every
them?
year, and they do like demonstrations and some
Yeah.
workshops with. And they
Yeah.
meet every week, I believe, on Sunday to do training with people. And it's just a nonprofit type of situation where anybody can come and join, from adults to kids, and it's really a cool thing. But I knew that she was able to do action, and especially using weapons. I didn't want to use a lightsaber, but instead I gave her a wooden staff to use,
Hmm.
and just trying to figure out, okay, so I want to work with her. I want to do something. I'd never really done an action scene before, and so I came up with this idea and kind of brainstormed with Chris Kubiak, who ended up being in the cast as well. And so I knocked out the script in a day and contacted Anna and said, "Hey, would you like to read the script I wrote?" And she read it. She's like, "Oh, I love it." I'm like, "Well, do you want to act in it?" And we ended up getting all the cast put together, the production people, and did an Indiegogo fundraiser, crowdsourcing fundraiser, and raised enough money to shoot it. And um, it was, oh boy. We shot it over the course of 2 weekends initially, 3 days. And then we came back and did some reshoots and some pickup shots several weeks later. But I like to say how initially what I wanted to do was a character drama with two people in a living room, and ended up with 5 actors, including a child, in the woods with fight scenes and makeup effects.
Yeah,
Wow.
so a
And
little bit away from the whole one room type of situation. Uh,
right. So yeah, and not to mention that we were shooting it in June, I believe, and it was supposed to be have thunderstorms the first weekend of production, and
oh.
the Friday before, the day before we were supposed to start shooting, um, weather was still predicting 70% chance of rain with thunderstorms, but it was looking like it might be clear during part of the day. And so I took the gamble because I had people coming in from all over the place. Kevin Almodovar, my director of photography, was coming in from Fort Walton Beach, which was a good hour away. We were shooting up in about 45 minutes from Pensacola. We had an actor, Jason Robbins, coming in from the Biloxi area. You know, Makeup people that were coming in from all over. I mean, it was really hard to schedule another day where everybody was available to come in from out of town. So we kind of had to take the chance, and fortunately, the weather cooperated with us. It rained a little bit when we first arrived on our location, and but by the time that everybody got into makeup and costumes, it had stopped raining, and it was kind of an overcast day. And actors would put plastic bags over their shoes so their shoes wouldn't get wet while walking out into the woods. And by the time that we were ready to shoot, it had dried up, and we spent the day filming as much as we could. And then at 5 o'clock, these black clouds rolled in, and we wrapped and just had enough time to get the equipment under tarps before the skies opened up. And the next day we started bright and early, and it was kind of that same overcast, so the lighting was perfectly the same. And by the late afternoon, it had opened up and had nice, pretty sky, and we were able to shoot some other scenes in the film at that point. Um, and same thing for the no, actually, I take that back. I think we only shot the 2 days, and then did a third day like 6 weeks later. And incidentally, it was an overcast day when we came back to shoot, so you would never know what the insert shots was that we shot 6 weeks later.
Nice.
We had an amazing cast that, I mean, they were so willing to do everything and jump in. They rehearsed for like a month with the fight scenes, and the crew.
Wow.
A lot of the crew were inexperienced, but they were really wanting to learn and wanting to take part and do the best they could. And we made a film that I think everybody's proud of. And I think most of the actors ended up winning some awards for their work. And AJ Caruso did the music, won 2 awards for that. Lavon French, who did the amazing costumes, she won awards for her work. And you couldn't ask for anything more.
Yeah, and that's
And I mean, no, I was gonna say, I mean, that must be like really, like a real push for you, in the sense where you've having to deal with kind of like the rejections from Hollywood, kind of just moving all this other stuff, and that was a huge win, because I mean that kind of inspired you to do a bunch more projects, right?
Well, a couple more, yeah. I ended up Survey came about just mainly because I hadn't been behind the camera directing in a
Hmm.
lot of years, and I'd been producing things for other people, but the producing is one thing, and I'm pretty good at it. But directing is a whole different animal, because then you get to be creative, and for those who may not know, the producing is all the logistics, the finances, the contracts, just making sure that the production is pulled together, overseeing all the aspects of it. The director can go make his movie. As a director, you're in charge of all the creative, and so you work with all the department heads, you work with the actors, you work with setting up the shots and making sure that the vision of the storytelling comes together accurately. For Survey, I ended up doing both. I was a producer and director, and it was challenging. And I swore after that I would never do that again. That, at least not as a solo producer. There's certain things, certain producing jobs that I can do while directing, but I really needed extra people on board. And for the next couple projects I did, yeah, it was. I had other producers on board, so that was very helpful to me.
yeah,
And go ahead. Oh, I keep
no,
interrupting you,
no,
Juju.
you're
Go,
fine.
go
You're
for it.
fine. I did want to drop that. That is, 2 things. First, the overcast and all that has always been my fear when it comes to filming or anything revolving kind of films. Because with like a high budget movie or something, it's fine. When it's more of like you're kind of enclosed, you're trying to keep a decent budget, not break the bank. You're trying to push it all out in a short time span. One bad
Oh yeah.
day, and that completely throws off all production because then
Mhm.
you lose a day, and that's
I've
messing
got a
everyone.
story.
Oh, go ahead.
I've actually got a story about that. So I did, I think it was 8 days as an background performer, an extra on
Mm.
Jurassic World, and mainly I just wanted to. I had the opportunity to get on that set, and because it was being shot in New Orleans, and like, yeah, cool, So I took the time and went over there, and I think the amount that I was paid for my hotel room for the week. But it was, I wanted to see how a big, huge budget production handled things, and in a lot of ways, they were doing exactly the same thing that we do at a low budget um, level. It's just they have more
Mm.
people and more toys to work with.
Yeah.
But we were like, maybe the third day of shooting, we showed up at like 6 in the morning to sign in. And they had this huge metal tent. I mean, it was just this gigantic like circus tent for all the background performers because they had 800 of us that were there.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so they had to get us through. They had breakfast for us in that big tent. That's where we waited until we were called onto set, which was like right next door. It was in the parking lot of the Six Flags that had been destroyed by Hurricane Katrina. So we literally had this broken down amusement park right next to where we had a fake amusement park built. And from the outside, you just see these big like piece of wood, and there's some wall. And when you walk in, suddenly you're in Jurassic World, and it's like, okay. And it looked exactly like a real functioning theme park, other than giant green screens on either end.
Oh yeah, of course.
But when that one day we showed up and it was storming out, and we're like, okay. And they told us to wait in our cars because it was not safe to be in the tent since it was made out of these big metal struts, and they were afraid of lightning striking it.
Lightning, yeah.
So we waited in my car for a couple hours until the storm passed. Then they brought us in, and they had us just sitting and waiting literally all day long. And finally, late in the day, they called us out of the set. Now, this is a continuation of what we had been shooting for the last couple days, which was bright, sunny day. And I'm just thinking, there's no way this is going to match. It's the lighting is completely different. We get onto the location, onto the set, and they get the camera set up and everything, and they don't even roll 1 foot of footage because they just decided, nope, not working, and they sent us all home.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
That's like I said, that's one of my biggest fears. It's like one weather change, all of it's thrown off. Not only for directors, and everyone is affected by that. Everyone.
Yep.
So God,
that's the biggest thing with destination weddings too. If you're gonna have a destination wedding on a beach, the biggest thing, and some people know this about me, but some people don't. Like I'm a photographer, so I have a wedding business, and the biggest thing that I always have to ask is, what's your plan B? Okay, because you got all these guests coming in from out of town. You have, because a wedding in itself is a big production. It's a big Hollywood production. Pretty much, it's a ceremonial. Hey, we're gonna give you away. So you have to take into consideration, well, what are you going to do? What are you willing to do? And how much are we going to have to face to get this job done? Or to get you married. But I can understand how nerve-wracking that would be, especially in the position that you were in, right? Where producer, director, or, writer, just kind of like, you were taking care of everything on all aspects of it, trying to make sure that logistically everything was working out fine. And even though it's not 800 people for you, it was 5 people and a child, which, I mean, having a child actor is always challenging in its own.
Yeah.
But, I can't imagine how, it's one of those situations where these are the reasons that you kind of wear a hat, because if not, you'll be pulling out all your hair. But I wanted to ask you also, because you mentioned that you were the director of programming for Pensacon, which is a really big, convention, geek convention, crossing everything from music to authors to performing artists. Just a huge genre of everything geek in Pensacola, and it must have been hard the first couple of years, because around that time when you guys were getting started, there was a kind of resurgence in conventions, and there were a lot of people getting ripped off at the same time.
There were a lot of bad actors out there, and I'm not talking about the Hollywood actors. I'm talking about people behind the scenes running conventions that were really doing a lot of shady things. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you guys had to build a lot of trust And it was something that, I mean, you have obviously kind of moved on in your world. I mean, you still know everyone there at Pensacon, but you were a programming director there for many years. But
10 years, I believe.
yeah, so how was that like being in charge of that? Because I mean, getting in contact with you during like the week before and then a couple days after was just like, no, let Steve decompress. you don't want to be messy, because I know that it must have been a huge challenge, because you were talking about producing and doing all this other stuff, but you're on the other end of a convention, basically the stuff that people don't see. What is that world like?
Well, it's a lot of logistics, and it's basically putting on a show. I mean, literally. I mean, we call it a show. It's convention, but we refer to it as a show. Um, there's different aspects to a convention like Pensacon, where you have obviously the celebrity guests, and they come
Mhm.
in and they sit at a table and sign autographs all day. They do photo ops where we have a professional photography team that comes in, and we schedule specific times, and people can buy them in advance and go and get the picture, and they literally interact with the actor for about 3 seconds and come in, smile, take the picture, and then leave, and the next person comes in, and then they get their photo, and it's memorized for forever and ever. But there's also like the vendor floor, where we have different you know a lot of different shops, a lot of different just weird things that you don't see normally in places. Now, obviously, a lot
Mhm.
of it you can buy on Amazon now, but there's still that uniqueness of, wow, I can buy a sword or a lightsaber or toys or comic books or things that I wouldn't necessarily go out of my way to search for,
Mm.
but it's right here, and it's like, oh, this is really cool. We, like you said, we have authors and artists that come in and sell their things, so there's that aspect of the show. What I did was anything that was not vendor floor, it was not the celebrity signings, it was not the behind the scenes logistics, it was but other aspects of putting on the show. Because the way I looked at it, I want to give people value for the tickets that they're buying. you know
Mm.
there are some shows where you just come in, spend your money to walk in the door, and you walk around, you might buy something, you might get an autograph, and then you leave, because that's it. I came for what I wanted, and now there's no reason for me to hang out anymore.
Mhm.
So what I was doing was putting together like a list of panels, where not only with celebrities, where they come and spend 45 minutes to an hour talking about themselves and talking about their work and their movies and everything, um, which is great. A lot of people see that, but also people from the community that come in who might be experts at things. Like I said, you came in to do
Yeah,
podcasts, and
podcasting, how
you've
to do
done live there
podcasting for
from,
free.
yeah.
Yeah.
But if, let's say, you have someone who's an expert on comic books and want to talk about the history of Superman or something like that, or they really are into certain TVs or movies, and let's say they're an expert on Godzilla, which we've had people like that,
Yep.
where they come in and talk about whatever new Godzilla movie is coming out, or the history of that. I think I've done panels talking about Batman, for instance, or talking about screenwriting. We have workshops that teach you how to make cosplay, or how to do robotics, or like 3D printing and things like that. That, like, oh wow, I don't have to just come in, meet the one celebrity guest I was here to see, and then leave. My ticket will give me a whole day full, or full weekend, if you buy a weekend pass, full of just a lot of really fun stuff that you would never get the chance to see anywhere else. So that's
Mhm.
where I came from. And not to mention, there was also, we had a stage with performers. We would do after hours comedy shows. We would do movie screenings. We have a film
Karaoke
festival.
apocalypse that we did. Karaoke
Yeah,
apocalypse that we
exactly.
did. Yeah.
I'm still in charge of the film festival. I've separated out from programming responsibilities, handed that off to other people who are stressed out now. But the
Yeah.
film festival is still strong. So it's and I'm very proud of that. So it's one of those things where, I mean, basically, I was working year round,
Mhm.
and but starting in October, the event was February, but starting in October, I would start getting applications and start putting things together and start working. I also produce the commercials for Pensacon, so which I still do. And start putting editing those and putting those together. And then come January, I'm getting my schedule locked in and doing a lot of logistics with emailing people and making sure that all the pieces are put together and coordinating with the photo ops people and, coordinating with the people who are booking flights for the guests, because sometimes I don't know when they're flying in, so I can't put the schedule together for when their panel is until I know when they're flying in and flying out again. So
Mhm.
there's just 1,000 moving parts that have to all click in, and a lot of times it doesn't click in until day that we open.
Yeah. And it's almost like you said, it's when you're writing a screenplay, when you're putting together these ideas, right? Everything has to kind of mesh. Everything, the funding, the cast, everything, it
Mhm.
all has to be, go together. So it's almost like your world in screenwriting and in the production part of film all kind of blends together. So it kind of made you a really good, uh, as be it very stressed out, but a very
Yeah,
good programming director, because you took lessons from everything that you've done so far and adapted it into this other world
right.
where we saw the collapse of so many conventions because of poorly managed or just logistically they thought it was just going to be an easy cash cow of just, hey, let's bring all these celebrities in, and it's just, but they don't realize that there's so much more behind it. So yeah, no, I can imagine how overwhelming all that was.
But with Pensacon, I mean, and I'm not really the best one to tell this whole story, but I know that Mike Ensley, who
Yeah.
initially came up with the idea and is the owner of Pensacon, um, his idea was just to have a 1-day event in the grand ballroom at the hotel, the Grand Hotel, which is now down. And in the year prepping it, it just kind of grew and grew to where we ended up having to move over to the Bay Center, which is, for those of you who are outside of the Pensacola area, it's basically a hockey rink that was built in the 80s and is just the stupidest building I think I've ever walked into. We
Yeah.
need a convention center so badly, but it just, we've made it work. And, but that first year, we had no idea how many people we would get. We were hoping for 5,000. We were thinking that, okay, if we get 5,000, we're doing really good. And we ended up with 11,000.
Yeah.
In year two, we doubled that. And then each year we've added on and just grown and grown and grown. And we outgrew the Bay Center and the hotel and ended up having to move to venues all over town. And we were such a unique convention in that regard, other than like Con in Atlanta, which consists of 5 different hotels and some other venues.
Mhm.
I think we're about the only convention that did that, where we spread out all over downtown.
Mhm.
And we got a lot of people in the community involved. The city rebrands the airport every
Yep.
year as the intergalactic airport, and they hang banners and different things that the gates are now stargates, and
Yep.
it's fun. They get into it. Now we've been partnered for the last couple of years with the um, First United Methodist Church of Pensacola. It has a wonderful facility. This campus is just amazing, and they have bent over backwards to make us feel welcome. And so we use their facility for all the panels and the programming. At the time, because my job during the weekend was running all over the city. I had a little golf cart that I'd be zipping around,
Yeah.
checking on everybody, making sure that everything was moving, was operating smoothly and putting out fires. And
Yeah.
I leave that job. Now everything's under one roof. Like,
Yeah.
all right, well, cool. I'm glad it happened finally. Should happen before I decided to step aside. But
Well, I mean, we saved you a little bit of a headache, Steve, just because I know that the last couple times we've done karaoke apocalypse, we've done it in the hall there, in one of those rooms, and we've been that close to getting kicked out several times, just because come on, it's karaoke, it's challenging, everybody likes to put on the best part, and we don't want to annoy everybody else, but we tend to do it. I'm not a very quiet person when it comes to entertaining, so but it is an amazing and fun time. If you guys haven't attended, Steve's been lucky enough to be there as a guest last couple years. And you
And
go
I had
ahead.
met Steve. I had met you. I think it was last year. I'm forgetting now. But
Yeah, it
last
was
year
the
it
year
was the
before.
first
Yeah.
time I did get to meet you, and it is fun to go to Pensacon. At least try to every year. You get to meet people you don't expect to meet. Uh,
oh, absolutely.
we didn't get anything from him, and I feel bad. But there's an actor from Little Chinatown who called us over because he liked my brother's costume, and we talked to him for so long. You get to meet the most amazing people at Pensacon or any convention, but I really love Pensacon. I really do.
Well,
Yeah, it was. It's like
the
our
thing is that
hometown con. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
99% of the guests are just wonderful people. I'm not going to talk
Mhm.
about that 1%,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
Yeah.
overwhelmingly, most of the people are just phenomenal. I mean, like Jason Isaacs, for instance, who's getting some claim right now on White Lotus, but he played
Mhm.
Lucius Malfoy, and he's been around for for a very long time. And I rode the elevator with him, and I was at the time we were using the Sanger Theater downtown for some of the bigger celebrity panels, and I told him, okay, well, you're going to be, your panel's at the Sanger. He said, oh yes. His agent and he, took a walk the night before downtown and looked at it, and it was great. And I said, okay, well, all you need to do, we have a wonderful transportation system here, just outside the green room. Just hop into a vehicle; they'll take you over. Oh, I think I'll walk. No, we'll take our transportation. Well, sure enough, I was at the Sanger. That it was a Saturday. I was just kind of making sure that all the big panels were going smoothly. And here he comes strolling in about a half an hour before his panel. And like, boy, they brought you early. He's like, no, I walked. He just decided to leave the
Nice.
Bay Center and walk downtown. Didn't bother telling anybody. So all the volunteers behind the scenes are freaking out because they can't find him. And
So he's
there's
gone
all this
missing.
chatter. So I had to get on the radio and go, yeah, I have him. He's down here at the Sanger. And I got to hang out with him for about half an hour and chatted with him. And he was just a wonderful person.
Fantastic. Now, one thing that we do here, and I'd love to go ahead and play with this game with you. It's called the Who the How, right? The who is you, and the how is something that we talk about that should be somewhere in your wheelhouse, something that you've mentioned, something that you're either familiar with or we could just have fun with. Now, we don't expect you to know all the answers, right? But
or any answer.
or any answers, but we expect you to try. It's a fun little thing that we do, just so that way we can kind of get back to our audience as well, so they could go back at and kind of talk to their family and kind of quiz them a little bit with some of the fun stuff that we hit up. And today we're going to talk a little bit about that character that's right over your shoulder there, Batman. So, I mean, we had to, right? I mean, as much as I'd like to go ahead and talk about backwoods Southern brothers, or kind of medieval Renaissance fighting, I think Batman deserves just a little bit of attention. Um, so are you ready to play the who the how?
Sure, let's go.
All right, fantastic. And we're gonna start like nice and simple. Something that keeps it, easy. So
Okay.
Batman debuted in Detective Comics, right? In 1939. What issue
Yeah.
of Detective Comics was Batman first in?
12?
Oh, you said 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. No, no, no. I thought you were going to say, well, no, but you said 12. Okay, no, it's actually issue number 27. Issue
Okay.
27 of Detective Comics. You were close, right? Only
It was
only off
in
by
the
math.
a dozen off, yeah.
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 But just a
you know,
dozen doesn't matter anything.
now, for a long time, everybody thought it was just Bob Kane who go ahead and created that, but we also had the wonderful Bill Finger, who was finally getting his due. And any kind of version that you see now of Tim Burton's Batman, now you see it. And
Reveal in.
All right, sorry, I'm
No,
just
you're fine.
gonna show.
uh-huh,
We need.
right
Oops,
there,
where you see it? Yeah,
Wow.
it
created
looks
by
like it's backwards on my screen, but
No,
Bob
it
Kane,
is
yeah, and Bill
perfect.
Finger.
we wanted to
Now,
make sure that everybody that contributed to the characters got credited.
absolutely. And I think that's like super important. And I'm really happy that, I was a big push for that because as much as everybody wants to give him the hurrah, right? You have
Mhm.
to acknowledge everybody who's had hands on this character, who's helped shape and build it. Now, leading into that, right? Um, Basically they took a lot of their inspiration from pulp heroes. Something that like we discussed with Bobby Nash, who's a great writer. We discussed a lot of pulp things. What are some of the inspiration? I'll take and there's quite a few, but give me at least one or two characters that inspired Batman.
Well, I believe Zorro was one of them, and
Yes.
I'm not sure if the Shadow came out before
No. Yeah, you're
Batman,
right. The Shadow.
but I believe that was one of the inspirations, even though it was kind of a contemporary. It was like, well, let's kind of take that concept and do something else with it. I want to say the Count of Monte Cristo, also
Actually,
possibly.
that had some underlining tones in it. But yeah, I was
Mhm.
looking for Zorro and the Shadow, which like if you combine those two characters together, I mean, essentially that's what you have. Zorro kind of being the defender of the poor who has a rich background, right? And then the Shadow who just strikes fear into like all these villainous people. And it all came from like that whole pulp idea of just and kind of like it's funny because you look at the original Batman, right? Like original comic strip series, and he's like, well, Batman never uses a gun. Hmm.
Yeah,
Are you
he
sure
does.
about that? You sure
It,
about that?
one of the craziest things I found about like younger Batman was the fact Joker was a toss away villain and that Batman kills him right off the bat. He no pun
hmm
intended there, but he just straight up kills him. So something for a kill move,
Yeah,
not kill move, a no kill rule, all that for
Right.
just a
and
murder.
actually, that was one. Well, that's one of the questions that I was going to ask. But no, go ahead. You were going to say something.
Oh, I was just gonna say, fun fact about the Shadow. I actually played the Shadow in a movie. We're talking about fan films, but
Oh,
when I was in film school, a friend of mine, Brad Weckman, was he was writing a feature film script for the Shadow that he wanted to try to pitch, and so one of his student projects was a trailer for the Shadow from his interpretation, and so I played the character.
That is so
wow.
cool. Now, okay, so what was that shot on?
Film, 16 millimeter.
Do you happen to still have it,
Oh, I don't
or a
know.
copy? Or would he? Would he have it? Like, because when I went to film
Oh,
school,
if he has it, that would be wonderful. I don't know. I don't know.
We
I have to
that
look it
would
up.
We gotta uncover that.
That
That should be
would be
really cool to
cool.
see. Yeah.
Is I still have some of my and I did a couple film projects shot on 16, and I still have the reels there. I did go ahead and convert them into digital not that long ago, but I was like, this is something that's kind of cool, like doing something like that. Can you imagine if that existed, you as the shadow somewhere out there?
Well, and
Right?
also I played the villain. I played two characters because we had a sword fighting. I'm terrible at sword fighting, by the way. But I had to sword fight the person who was trying to train me on sword fighting. He was in the shadow costume, and so basically both the characters I was playing were sword fighting each other. But it was a body double in that scene. But yeah, I played the villain, and I had to have this makeup on and with a huge nose to try to make it look like the comic book accurate. And
Uh-huh.
yeah, it was an interesting shoot. We shot it overnight at Universal Studios, and they're in Florida, in Orlando, and uh,
That is so
it was
cool.
fun.
That is so
Let's go back to
cool.
the
Now, because it's been a long time coming because we were talking about the no kill rule, right? Batman's no kill rule, which it wasn't always like that. DC did kind of like a pivot at one point. What year did they do that pivot? Where they, yeah, and I know this one's a hard one. I like that face you put. You're actually going to give this a little bit of thought. Where it kind of changed like that no kill rule, and he went to a non-lethal vigilante.
I would say probably in the I wouldn't know the exact date. Probably in the 40s, more than likely.
Okay. Okay, so would you say it was the early 40s or late 40s?
I would throw it maybe mid. Let's just say 46.
We're looking for 1941. 1941 was the year, and
A little
actually,
earlier than what I was.
well, and I mean, Batman issue number four was the first appearance of Gotham City, where he first got like the whole established Gotham City, which was in 1940. So by that time, he was still using, the whole sidearm thing, where it was okay to kind of be, because at that time things were different. I mean, you'd have these hardcore detectives and pulp characters. At that time, the comics were a little bit more. Not as kid friendly as they were at this time, because it's not necessarily as much geared for adults, but it is for like an older audience, because you had the tunes, which were kind of like more your Porky Pig and stuff like that, those kind of Little Lulu, those comics. And then you had, kind of like what you would call the graphic novels of today in comparison to, your Sunday morning comic strips. Which are those things even a thing anymore?
I think.
Like,
I think they're all webtoons now.
They're all webtoons, right? But yeah, no, that's when that change was there. So and I'm going to go ahead and I have one more for you. Now, remember those dates that I told you: Gotham City, 1940, right? No Kill Rule, 1941. Do you know, and bonus points if you can tell me the issue, do you know when we saw the first appearance of the Batcave?
Batcave?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I'm probably so far off base here. I'm going to go with 1940 just simply because I think that was an early edition, but with my luck, it was probably like 1950.
No, actually, no, you weren't that far off. So, believe it or not, it was 1943, Batman issue number 12. So, issue number 4, we had Gotham City. Issue number 12, we had the Batcave. And the Batcave looked nothing like what it looked on, obviously later on as the renditions grew and grew.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first one that we had, and believe it or not, what do you think came first, the Batcave or the Bat Signal?
Probably the Bat Signal.
That is correct. The Bat Signal came first, and then the Batcave followed. 1942 for the Bat Signal. also, but it made its first appearance in, what was it, Detective Comics number 60. So at that time, it was
Unfortunately,
still,
I'm just like with like the comic book history and like dates and issue numbers.
you're
That's
like,
not my
nah.
wheelhouse.
Well, I didn't expect it to be, but I thought it would be fun either way. Now, speaking of your wheelhouse, I want to touch base on a couple projects. What do you have coming up in the works? Because I know that you have something really cool coming up here shortly.
Well, on one hand, I've got The Walker that's in film festivals right now. It's making its way through the festival circuit. It's won best actor for its lead star Alex Hyde White, and it's played in 6 different festivals. And it had its world premiere in London, which I was fortunate enough to go to. But anyway, so
Yeah.
there's going to be, hopefully in the next couple of years there'll be a lot of festivals they'll be playing in, hopefully. But I've also been focusing on writing fiction, and including I've got 2 books that are collections of short stories. They're multi-genre, Portals of the Mind and The Signpost Up Ahead. And then I've also got a couple, including the Batman script. I got 2 other screenplays that both are award winners that are available in screenplay format, but are published that are available to purchase. But I just created a publishing company to run my books through. It's called Arrowhead Publications, and I'm starting to lose my voice here. So,
You're fine.
but Arrowhead Publications, and in fact, the website should currently now be available. I think this is the big announcement that I have not
That's
yet
awesome.
let anybody else know. Arrowheadpublications.com, to where you can actually purchase my books directly from the website. They're available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. In very soon will be available in other distribution outlets too. But for the ebooks, for the collections, unfortunately the screenplays are not available on ebook. But the fiction you can download directly from my website. You can purchase it right there and put it right on your Kindle or Nook or whatever other device. And if you want to buy an autographed copy from me, and you don't have you don't want to wait until Pensacon in February, you can buy it directly from my website, or it'll direct you to the different platforms. But I do have a couple books that I'm working on. I just finished actually a short story called Another Stupid Time Travel Trip. And
Okay.
if you sign up for my newsletter, you will get a free copy of that. And so I've got that, and then I've got 2 books that I'm currently writing. One is a novella called To Save a Kingdom, and it's a fantasy mystery, if you will, but it's like high fantasy set in a fantastical kingdom with magic and all that stuff. And then I've got a horror novel called Feeding Time that is in the works, and it's set in Pensacola. Very gruesome. Detectives are trying to solve a grisly murder that may or may not have been committed by a human being. So
Oh,
those
that's
are
cool.
in
Wow,
the
okay.
works. Yeah, be on the lookout for those.
And we can find those, and we're going to go ahead and have your link tree below. So
Okay.
guys, remember that if you want to go ahead and see Steve's work, which it is fantastic, we'll have those links below. Reach out to him, purchase his stuff, get his John Hancock on a couple of these really great stories. In those anthologies, like your most recent one, I had the honor of purchasing that from you from your table, and it's really good quick reads where you don't feel like and I'm always like that. I'm always running around from spot to spot,
Yeah.
but these are really nice like accomplishment reads. Like I'm going to go ahead and kind of get through a couple really good stories just to kind of help fuel your imagination. And what better way to go ahead and gift something than the gift of imagination and the gift of wonderful storytelling? So be on the lookout for that. And
Yeah, and
go ahead.
one thing I just got to say about my stories too, I don't take people's advice very well when they say, "Oh, focus on one thing and just keep doing that one thing." I don't write in one genre. It's so that's why these books are multi-genre. So each story is going to be something different. It'll be a potpourri. You might get some science fiction, you might get a fantasy, you might get a horror, you might get a comedy, you might get just who knows what, a western.
Yeah.
It's just whatever came to mind as like, oh, I have to write this and put it in there. So they're not themed. So if you're looking for just strictly science fiction, I don't have that. But but you might find something you like in there.
He's basically a very modern version of Reader's Digest. And there's some people who get that reference, and then there's people like Juju who's just started laughing because he doesn't know why, because everybody else is laughing. Kids, back in the day, there was this thing called Reader's Digest. Google it.
I've heard of
are they
it.
still around? Is Reader's Digest even still around?
I haven't heard anyone mention it.
No idea.
I remember hearing a lot about it because I live with you, so I heard a lot about Reddit Digest like way back when, but I've not heard it since like what 20 like
their
17.
their collections of stories. Reader's Digest used to you'd send out these books as also like TV Guide. It was just a collection of different stories from all sorts of different genres. It was kind of like what you were talking about earlier, and it was funny. I was going to make a mention of that, Steve, before we go. Your life history kind of reminds me a little bit of Steven Spielberg, in the sense that kids like working on film, kind of like following this passion. You had something that seemed very similar to Amazing Stories. uh Kind of like you are the working man's Steven Spielberg. But
I would
have you ever
never put myself up at that level.
well, I mean, take the compliments when the compliments are due, and you've done a lot of really, really cool stuff. Like I said, a lot of notches in your belt, plus a lot of really good work to show for it. Despite every other little hurdle that you've had, you seem to have cleared very well. And even when you don't clear them, right, you dust yourself off, you get back up, and you're like, okay, well, we're going to give this another shot. And that's something that I've always appreciated to hear from you. And like I said, always a smiling face at a convention, always running around and then coming
That's
back.
not what I've been told, but
Well, the thing is like every time I see you, you got a smile on your face. So I don't know who's watching you that's telling you otherwise. But and I think that's key, because when you're at a convention and you're sitting behind that table, you're selling yourself. Before you ever
oh, yeah.
sell a book off a table. You know. So I definitely want to thank you so much for taking the time out and kind of giving us a little insight into your world, and sharing some time with us, sharing some bat facts, and showing us that if there's anything that we want to do in this world, make sure that we do our own original version of it, and make sure that we have the support that we need, because if not, wear a hat, because you're gonna be ripping your hair out. um, and whatever you do, don't go into a tent in New Orleans, surrounded by metal trusses in a storm, right? So
Yeah, because you might get attacked by a dinosaur.
Yeah, that's a good
yeah,
tip, just in case.
that is a great tip, just in case.
Just in case.
And Juju, don't you have like a last question that you want to ask Steve
Okay.
before we?
No, I like to ask this to everyone I can. What could you say to anyone, writer, director, anyone who wants to get into the field that you've been in? What would you say to them to give them that kind of advice to start making their steps into, like follow your footprints of being in both not theater, but kind of like in the film industry? What would you give to them as like a final words?
just go for it. You know, be creative and don't let anybody stop you.
That's some good words, yeah.
Those
Because
are great. Basically, almost like Nike, right? Just do it.
Just do it, yeah. And that's one of the biggest things we always go back to is just Nike. Just do it. Just go for it. But that is beautiful.
Shia LaBeouf was right. So,
yeah, in some ways, yeah, in some ways. But no, thank you for that because
and no, you were gonna say something?
No, I was hoping you were going to cut me off.
yeah, I should have. Well, Steve, thank you so much for being on. Again, my name is Deadpool Speaks, and you've been listening to Chimichanga Talk. No, absolutely. And with me, as always, was the ever talkative Bad Juju and the absolutely amazing and wonderfully talented Steve Wise. Thank you so much for being on. And we'll see you guys next week for another Roundup Podcasting. And we'll see ya. Bye.
Thank you for listening this week, and remember, just like always, we will be back next week with another great guest and more adventures from the land of Chimichanga Talk. So tune in next time, same Deadpool time, same Deadpool channel.